Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is me and peace out to the rest of you. You know who it is, blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media, signing black in and shining again, asking you to hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. So, I mean, you already see the title. It's a rant about what I learned from Gamechanger's live stream. But I'm going to clear it up in the beginning by specifying that it's not just his live stream from which I've learned this stuff. However, I learned a little bit more this morning, my time, yesterday night, your time, from the live stream. I had to get up and leave, I don't know, maybe about 2 hours into it. I had to bounce off the live stream because when the curfew was lifted here, it's early in the morning, but then you got a short time before it gets too hot. Today just happens to be an abnormally cool day, so here I am a few hours later and I'm still outside. It's just not that hot right now. Thank goodness. Nice weather. But it's 10:09 a.m. as I'm recording this. Normally by now you can't be outside that easily. But it looks like it's gonna be a comfortable day today. Shoot, my wife and I, or my halal girlfriend and I, might go walking later on this afternoon. Wa alaikum salam. Kimanachin. Alhamdulillah. So, anyway, I learned something new. And I'm going to start off by thanking Gamechanger for letting me come on. And I want to thank him and Anon and LSM, even though we're not allies. I mean, and I'm not saying it because I hate them. I'm saying it's because they can't stand me. And that's okay. I understand that sometimes. But despite that, they were civil with me. They didn't meet me with hostility, so I did not have to become hostile. Thank you, Melody, for being very patient with my long-windedness on that stream. And I'm going to tell you all why it was that I'm going to tell you why I was talking so long before I got off. One reason I got off was, as I said, you know, I expected it to be much hotter and I didn't think we'd have much time to get out and get some exercise. But the other reason is because I was trying to give historical information so that we would not become victims of misconceptions as we progress through the live stream. So I was trying to prevent common misconceptions with no hatred towards anybody that might have believed them. I just wanted to prevent them ahead of time. So I meant well. I meant no harm. Unfortunately, to give history lessons, you have to take a few minutes to talk. So I was trying not to talk too fast, but also trying not to talk too slow and drag it out. Give everybody else a chance to talk. I was trying. I just meant to help and contribute, in other words. I was shocked at the civility with which I was treated by some people that are on that platform and have not been able to tolerate me from before. Today, the only person I really could not stand to see was in the chat, not even on the live stream. And that's another talk for another day. But I'm going to go in on his little punk devil behind later on, inshallah. And I'm going to do it by name if I remember, inshallah, because I might forget. And I'm going to do it not because of his DNA sequence either. I'm going to do it because of a choice he made. See, Brady forgave this dude. I never will. Not going to at all. And I want to give a shout out to Sister Brown for telling me about that. I confirmed later on through another source. Yep, that's true. So anyway, I'm going to talk about what I already knew briefly just to give you a background and give context to be fair to the topic. I already knew that the colorism in the United States is not like the colorism that's international. I won't say global because there's bound to be some part of the world that doesn't have it, but they're probably isolated. But something that is international, meaning it goes from country to country. There's international colorism, and it does pretty much start from a particular region in the Asian continent. From which white folks got it and took it to another level of, as we know, white supremacy, because they were initially the same thing, I'll be honest. They were the same thing. The discrimination of a particular group of light-skinned Asians, Western Asians, and I don't mean the Orientals either, but a particular group of light-skinned Western Asians living in high elevations on the continent of Asia, was both white supremacy and colorism. It was how they distinguished themselves from others. Colorism is probably older than outright racism or white supremacy only because before you had light-skinned races of people, you had to have a variation of complexions within one race. The first one is much older than the second. The complexion variations within any race are much older than an entire race of people being pale. Because you have about somewhere between 8 to 19 genes for human skin color. And when I say between, what I mean is, I don't remember if it's 8, 11, or 19, but it's one of those three. Anyway, one of the things that these genes tend to share in common, with maybe a few exceptions, is that whatever gene codes for more melanocyte activity, meaning melanin production, meaning showing a darker color, is dominant over the ones for paler shades. Lesser melanocyte activity, meaning lesser melanin production. Generally speaking, the genes coding for darker shades are more dominant than the ones coding for paler shades. The gene for albinism is the most recessive of all. So if a child gets a gene from mom for albinism and a gene for dad from just light skin, then they're going to produce less melanin, but they will have it. Now, if they get 2 copies of the gene for albinism, then they're going to be albino, and that's a different story. So I'm just saying this, I'm really saying this to clear up misconceptions again. That's why I'm going through all of this. I'm not trying to bore you with a DNA lesson. And there are people that are experts in it, and they could tell you more than I could. But I'm going to tell you what I've understood from those experts. So you could argue, was it white supremacy when it got started, or was it colorism? Chicken or egg? Not going to argue with any of you about that. Now you have 2, but they're still closely related. I get it. The international model of colorism follows white supremacy. That's the international model. It's one-sided. It is one-directional. You have just recently begun to have resistance to this. In India, which is mostly Hindu, you've got more of a resistance than you do next door in Muslim Pakistan. And for that, I say to you Pakistanis, shame on you. You let the Hindus with their 3 million gods and their racist religion by definition beat you with your true religion, with your true faith. That's because they're following your true faith more than you are. That's mostly because a lot of Muslims have been brainwashed into thinking that God is as racist as they are. And African Muslims are not always an exception to this. That's why skin bleach sells more than any other cosmetic product in Western Africa, Central Africa, and the Caribbean islands. That's why in many parts of Asia, every skin product, whatever it is, has to have a whitening agent, even the tanning lotions. I will not forgive either one of you for this. Ever. Because as far as I'm concerned, by accepting white supremacy, you have insulted God. Allah made all of us equal. You start off as equal. Babies are equal. And we know this instinctively. You make moral choices as you get older, and then you become unequal. You're not as good as somebody who's given more than you in charity, unless they've done something worse than what you've done to balance it out. End of story. That's the only superiority or inferiority there actually is. There's nothing genetic about it. Certain genes have advantages in certain environments, and that's okay. I'm talking about moral superiority. No. That doesn't come with a DNA sequence. So now that we got that out the way, next thing, and I've already known about this, I've also known that in Black America, the colorism is different. Number one, within America, colorism is regional. But it's largely regional with respect to which gender has the advantage in the mating market. Whether it is a religious marriage market or a completely immoral hookup market or anything in between, whatever the case is, people are going to sexually and maritally select differently, different genders in different regions, but it does tend to be an overarching pattern. In New York, much of the Northeast coast, and the Southeastern United States, if you are a light-skinned male, you're going to face a backlash. It was okay in the 80s. It ain't okay to be that light-skinned in the 90s and since then. And I know, one of you, your initials are HU and the third. You're going to say to me, Black Mind, stop it, just stop it, because you already did, just because I asked somebody a question about what region they came from so that I can understand further and in more detail than what I know, the regional effects of colorism and the regional variations. But if colorism in the United States does vary from region to region, within the continental 48 states, and then within its overseas territories. If that is the case, and it does vary within the country, how the hell can American colorism be the exact same as international colorism around the world? It can't. That's impossible, right? Now, that being said, I want to thank Gamechanger for pointing out that a lot of these colorism crybabies, at least the major two that are leading in this call and that are being followed mostly, hail by descent from not only one nation outside the U.S., but one particular region within that nation, and probably even one tribe. And it ain't the Yoruba. But just to clear that up, no, I'm not blaming the Yoruba for this. I don't know enough about them to say how innocent or guilty they are. I've not seen evidence of any guilt. I give the benefit of the doubt. Innocent till I find out you're guilty. If anybody else knows anything one way or another, feel free to tell me in the comments what you've seen. But right now I don't know, so I ain't gonna comment. I ain't gonna point finger at them. I know about somebody they're in conflict with, though. I know about them. They got something to say about everybody. Every shade, every nationality, every tribe, even their own tribes, because they come in different clans and they're not centralized. So they will talk mad crap about each other based on clan when nobody else is in the room. Then somebody else that's not from their tribe comes in the room and they're going to get on that person. And if you ain't from their nation, they're going to get on you about whatever nation you are from. End of story. And that's a lot of the reason why it is that other nationalities are getting sick of this particular nationality, which is unfair to people of that nationality from other regions and from other tribes that ain't had nothing to do with this, ain't part of the problem. And even if they're from that tribe and from that city and ain't part of the problem, it ain't fair to them. But hey, when people are willing to make a bad name for themselves, they don't care who else they get by association. Malaysians are sick of them. The problem is sometimes Malaysians are confusing other Africans for them and mistreating them. And so now, and I'm talking about the Malay Malaysians, not the Chinese Malaysians or the Indian Malaysians. Their butts are racist against everybody darker than them. That's already known. They've been that way. Ever since they were back in India and China before they went to Malaysia, they've been that way. And they did not lose that after living in Malaysia for centuries. That's why the Malay people don't know that the Indians are racist. The Indians are darker than them. That's why they don't know the Indians are racist. You want to find out how racist an Indian is, you got to be darker than them. Then you find out. They're never biased against people that are paler than themselves, or rarely are they. I didn't know about this when I was a kid, but that's another story. So let's go ahead and start talking about this bias. The Chinese are biased. They're biased against the Malays and the Indians, but the Chinese are paler than both. The Malays are not biased, ironically, except for cultural reasons, and that's why I look up to them. But they've come across a particular nationality within Africa, a particular region of a nationality within Africa, and they become culturally biased and are mistakenly discriminated against some other black folks. If they know that you're not from that particular nation, then they will relent. I give them credit for that. Anyway, in America, it's not the same thing. And I already knew that. I knew it's not the same thing. I knew that in the United States, you are bound to have had individual instances of light brights discriminating against other black folks. Individual instances. But when it goes to the level of violence, I have not heard of that. I have not seen where somebody who is paler feels it's okay to go and commit violence against one of their own darker relatives. Maybe you know of instances like this, and you can tell me in the comment section. But as of the time of me recording this, I'm not aware of them. I am aware of and have lived through cases when people thought that it was okay to do violence against a light bright. Be it somebody that was just light-skinned or somebody that was mixed or biracial. Take your pick. I know of cases where the reverse is. So when it comes to physical retaliation and violence that's based on shade and DNA sequence in our community, it has been what you would not expect. That Madam C.J. Walker movie was a damn fluke. I knew that was not the case. Madam C.J. Walker actually worked for I think it was Annie Monroe, if I'm not mistaken, that was her name. Of course, it was Addie something in the movie. There's no record of them, no written record that I could find of them ever arguing over phenotype or shade. This was thrown into the movie for no further mucking reason at all. So I'm going to say to these colorism crybaby hypocrites, especially the two that are running the show, but really to everybody that's followed them, let me explain something to you. You have taken a topic that needs to be confronted, but also needed to be understood. You have not understood the topic, still confronted it, and you have influenced this movie. So you may merely be YouTubers, but congratulations. Your influence has gone into journalism and by extension into movies. Shame on you. You have said something on YouTube, and now people that may not even know about you know about the issue, and they have the same flawed view that you have. Shout out to Light Skin Motivation for pointing that out. She and Anon brought the historical receipts. They could hate me, and I wouldn't blame them if they do. They wouldn't be right. I'm just not going to blame them if they do, but they brought receipts for that. It ticked me off at times. I think they're not militant enough to a certain extent. Too militant in the wrong direction. As far as I'm concerned, if you're going to be that militant about something, then you're going to say, look, this problem actually we got this problem from white folk. And that's because it's true. Africa did not have an issue with colorism. I do not know of any time that Africa as a whole had an issue with colorism until we got it, not even from the Arabs, but from white folk. I can't put that one on the Arabs. They got it from the same source that the Europeans got it from, but we got it from the Europeans. They took that, whatever the original was that came from you-know-who, the originators I'm pointing out to come from the same continent I'm standing on. And a hint, it wasn't the Arabs either that started it. But the original Aryans that started it, Europeans got it, and it became white supremacy and colorism, and we got the colorism from their white supremacy. That's how it started. And so I would say, yes, I would love for them to say, yes, it started with them, and it is their fault as much as it is ours. We perpetuated it, but we did not start it. I just want them to say that. And I don't want them to let white folk off the hook. And I'm not going to forgive that particular one that insulted Brady. She forgave him. I never will. Not going to. Because ain't nobody taught him self-hatred. And that goes to show you, they're going to resort to the white supremacy. You make them angry enough. Now, this is what I learned from them today, because it's taken me 18 minutes to get this far. Sorry. What I've learned from them today is that apparently this backlash is older than what I thought. I thought that the backlash probably started in the 90s, because that's when I became aware of it. About 88, I became aware that sometimes I might be praised or pedestalized because of my phenotype. It didn't happen very often. I was told it would by my own parents. My parents said, don't accept it. Some people think that, some people are going to have an inferiority complex and they're going to look up to you, and you just graciously say the same things. You compliment them too, because they just need to hear compliments about themselves, son. And I said, sure. Because I was ready to do this and uplift the self-esteem of my people. I still want to do it. I'm doing this now because I never stopped from the time they told me this. But what I did not realize was that the backlash was coming. But then I learned something from, that panel. Not only from Gamechanger, but from the panel members. I learned something I had not known before. And this is what I learned. The backlash was old. That backlash had been around for a long time. Backlash was much older than what I thought. That Color Purple movie, I haven't seen the scene yet, but I want to. Apparently, when Oprah's character got slapped, we were supposed to feel pain. That was a valid point. When Celie got slapped, we were supposed to feel pain. That was Whoopi Goldberg's character. We were supposed to feel pain. But when Squeak, played by Ray Don Chong, was hit in the face by Oprah's character, we were supposed to think it was funny. Now, I don't remember that scene, but I'm going to go and take a look at it. What I learned was that I need to watch that movie again because, see, I was a kid when it came out. Same with School Days. I need to go back and watch them now as an adult from beginning to end so I can learn some stuff. But I had to excuse myself in that live stream, as I've said, because I had to go walking before it got too hot. Turns out it's not going to be that hot today. Thank God. But I didn't know that. So as I was getting dressed, I went ahead and I took a look at the scene from School Days in which the college guys at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, before it became KFC, got into the argument with, the street dudes, the real brothers, played by Sam Jackson, and somebody with a shower cap on. And guess what? That was not colorism, that was classism and regionalism. Because you see, the college guys were not from there. But the real street dudes, they was from there. You come here year after year. We from here, live here, and gonna die here if we can't find jobs because of niggas like you. That's regionalism. That's classism and regionalism. I'm a real street nigga from here. You was a ditty out of town nigga. Classism and regionalism. And I realized that what I'd been facing when I was growing up was all three. I was not aware at the time how much of it was colorism. As I said, I found out definitively how much of it was colorism when I had my last fight in high school and I went to thank one of the guys that weekend when I was on suspension. Went to his house to thank one of the guys that took my back. And I said, I don't know why it is that I got to get more fights than other people. Because what I see is, we all argue, but people will start an argument with me and then quickly try to turn into a fight. And I spent all this time talking myself out of fights because I don't want to fight my own kind. But why is it that people are quick to jump on me? And my man, he said to me, because you're not black. But I am black. I mean, you're not black. So they think they're gonna win easy. Oh, damn. Okay. So a suspicion I had for like 5 minutes back in middle school was now being told to me to be true. That's when I found out. Before that, I knew about the classism and to a certain extent the regionalism. They think I got more money than them. I didn't, but they thought I did. I wasn't from there. That's true. My parents were not from the city in which I grew up, nor the city in which I was born. My parents did not grow up on the Gulf Coast. Turns out their ancestors came through the Gulf Coast, but they didn't grow up there. So I knew about the regionalism. I knew about the classism. I had all that evidence. Now, fast forward to now, and I know that it was all three. But what I also learned was that, the other thing I learned from them was that the backlash has apparently been more severe for a lot longer than what I thought. See, they jarred a memory of mine as I was listening, and I remembered. In 2017, I went for a visit back to the U.S. that summer. It was, this time of year, but it was that summer, 3 years ago. And I went back, visited, and my parents and I had a talk. And somehow, I think they were trying to talk about certain traumas that had happened. Because at this point, I was a parent. And I'd been a parent for a few years, but what they were trying to do is they were trying to help me to not repeat their mistakes. Because I had told them before that I was not going to knowingly repeat any of their mistakes. Not knowingly. So when I got back for this vacation, they said, well, son, and that's a valid point, and we're looking at some of the things we may have done wrong. We didn't mean to, but, we'll discuss some of it so you can avoid repeating it. And that was a very grown-up thing for them to do. And one of the things they said was, we taught you wrong to a certain extent. Because there were times when you were younger, and you may be too young to remember, but they must have had an effect on you. There were times when you were treated and you were suspected and you were mistrusted more than other kids. You were mistreated by some, not just other kids, but some older people, some adults, older kids and adults, and you were mistrusted. And And we assumed that it had to do with the fact that we were from out of town and they thought we had more money. But it turned out a lot of times they were jealous. And I said, well, Dad, if they were jealous of me, it turns out, you know, they would have had more money. Sometimes they had more. And they were from here. They had family here. What were they envious of me for? My dad said, well, they thought, some of them thought that we had more money than what we had. And now that I think about it, it was color. He told me about some instances, and one of them I could remember, the other one I could not. Apparently when I was a toddler, they were trying to support black businesses in the city in which I grew up. So they found black daycare. That didn't work. They went to pick me up from one daycare, and I had crawled under the beds to sleep because not only were the ladies just mean to the kids in general, but they really didn't trust me. So much for light skin privilege. I don't remember it. But my parents didn't put two and two together at the time. They didn't know. Because they had never heard of a backlash themselves. Then another time they came to pick me up from another one, and I was out in the front yard crying my eyes out, and one of the daycare ladies she was a teenager. She was out there fussing and cussing at me for stuff, and I hadn't done anything wrong. Some other ones witnessed to my parents he didn't do anything wrong. Black was not out of line. She was mad. There was another time where a lady said, when I was a baby, I couldn't talk. A lady tried to hold me, but I wouldn't let her. I was afraid of her. Now, my mother knew that I had seen this lady fussing at other kids, so I was afraid of her. The lady took my crying and trying to get away as colorism. Well, I can see why. I am dark after all. Wait, what? So as a toddler, as a baby who couldn't talk, she thought I was born with this instinct. There was another scenario in which, and I do remember this one. I remember this incident, but I didn't know what the guy was talking about. I was still an only child. My parents went to some gathering of friends in New Orleans one day. And I didn't go to school that day. I went with them because a bunch of kids were out there. These were friends of my parents, and they had kids. So all us kids were playing. And I had fun because the kids were friendly. As a matter of fact, I don't remember being the palest kid out there. I must have been. I just don't remember that because I was too young. But when I went to get some water from my dad, because you run around and get thirsty, I went to get some water from my dad, and one of the other adults, a friend of my dad, said, "Oh, that's great. Black is playing so nicely with the other kids, even though they're all darker than him. That's excellent." He wasn't saying it sarcastically. He really meant it. And he knew my parents well enough to know that they would never teach me color prejudice, certainly not against darker people. So that means he must have also thought that this is a natural instinct. Now, my memory was jarred of the conversation in 2017 because when I got back here from the vacation in 2017, I was divorced from my North African ex-wife. Black, but light-skinned like me. First time I gave a light-skinned woman a chance. I thought that we were divorced at that time because of her colorism, her inferiority complex about her black blood. Later, I found out that's not why she requested a divorce. It was for political reasons. She actually agreed when I corrected her about the inferiority complex. However, at the time, I didn't know this. So when I talked to my friend who was looking to hook me up with someone else, I said, well, you know, I'm no longer against light-skinned women per se, but I'm not sure what, you know, who should I look for? If I do get a lighter-skinned woman that is from North Africa or from Africa, how do I know that she only wanted me? How do I know that she didn't just want me because I'm not dark? How could I be sure? Because I know this inferiority complex is back home. And on the flip side, if I'm going to get someone from back home, don't they have the right to not trust me? And they may not. And he said, I'll look on your behalf, man, but, you know, we'll look for some actual uncontroversially black women. Dark or in the middle, he just meant the kind that don't have a problem with being black. So he looked at some of the single ladies that he knew that didn't have a problem with being black. They were proud of it. He sent them my photographs. When the only one that was attractive was also the only one that said I was not her type, I said, wait a minute, this happened before I became Muslim. I remember this. And I got an explanation. What was it? And then my memory was jarred. The colleagues at my job told me what it was. And so it was in 2017 that I remember the conversation I had in 2001 in which I was told, no, you don't have to be ugly. You're light-skinned, you're straight hair, with straight hair, you're racially ambiguous. That's not what women want because they can't brag about that to their friends. That's when it was explained to me by more than one lady. Two told me, one really explained it, a third confirmed it. Didn't realize what she was doing. They didn't know each other. What I learned from the live stream was something else, though. From the live stream, I want y'all to keep in mind, I learned this. I learned that even though I cannot justify calling for a reclassification, and certainly not of people that are just light-skinned with two black parents, I definitely cannot justify calling for a reclassification there. For those who are, in fact, mixed, I have to leave it up to them. I don't recommend it, but I got to leave it up to them. But I learned that there is a legitimate reason for them to call for a separate community. Now, maybe not a reclassification, but even within the race, I understand why they must call for a separate community. I get it. Now I understand. Unfortunately, they don't feel they have a choice. These are not necessarily sellouts. Now, when I say they, I'm talking about the people that are in the chat per se. Not necessarily content creators, because I haven't heard all of their content. They may have sold out and I just didn't hear it. They may not have. I don't know. But the ones that are in the chat per se and they're following them, I really can't sit up and say that they're wrong for calling for a separate community, because they expect to be mistreated. And they've got evidence and experience to back that up. They are so mistrusted. Even when people don't hate them, they're so mistrusted that the colorism crybaby hypocrites that have come along into black American spaces and stirred this stuff up without understanding the regionality of colorism within our people have been able to convince all of us that it is what they got a lot of people thinking that it is. It's always the light bright's fault. Every time there is a racial or color-based conflict, it is the fault of the paler skinned party. I believed that myself a long time ago. Well, not even a long time ago. I believed that myself up until about 2018. To tell the truth. Now, when you're dealing with the international colorism, that statement is pretty true. If there is a color-based, not a conflict where the people are different colors, but if there is an actual color-based conflict, it is always the paler against the darker outside of the United States. And black America, no, I can't say that. I don't have the historical evidence to back it up. When by the time it gets to physical confrontation, it is usually the reverse. And most black folk ain't really trying to walk around beating up on light brights, because most of them don't hate us. Usually, they just simply have a raised eyebrow. What is this? What is he going to be like? What is she going to be like? Can we trust him or her? But they don't actually hate and want to beat us up. In most cases, it is rare that anybody wants to just go around beating up on light brights, especially as adults. But when there is violence in America, in black America, that's usually the pattern. It is the paler one that is being targeted, not doing the targeting. The paler ones don't feel like it's even okay to do this. The paler ones don't feel like they can justify doing something like that, even if it's been done to them. It's like Light Skin Motivation said. Her own parents told her, well, they're taking out on you the anger they've got from racism. Great, okay. My answer to that is, if you're going to do that, and I have been, I've been witness to that and been targeted by that. If that's what you're going to do, You go take it out on the actual white racist. And the next time I catch somebody trying to take out on me their anger at actual white supremacy on anybody that is not a white supremacist, that means even if they grab an innocent white child and want to take it out on them, when I catch somebody doing that, I'm going to kick them in their stomach. I'm going to bust some ribs up to protect somebody else about this mess. I don't care if the person's from the motherland or from the US. I don't care. Start that mess. Take out your anger that you have towards white folk on somebody that's black, but, you know, questionably so. Or take it out on another black person, period. For any reason, of any phenotype. We're going to have problems. And I hope not to see it, because I'm not a violent person. But in fact, most of you, when you think about it, because I'm talking about it now, when you're hearing me talk about it, most of you actually feel ready and prepared to do the same thing. Because you know it's wrong. You see, between my 4th and 5th grade year, when I was playing in my dad's hometown with some guys from the neighborhood, one of them named Chester, I don't remember his last name, he lost a girlfriend. She didn't die, she just broke up with him. This is kid stuff anyway. Okay, all right. He's a little kid, she broke up with him, he mad. But in his fit of anger, he just grabbed me, started choking me out of nowhere. I hadn't done nothing to him. And everybody else pulled him off. And before I could kick him in his nuts, as they were pulling him away, they got him back before I could kick him in his nuts. He was already too far off. They were dragging him off. And one of them said to me, "We're going to catch up with you later, Black." Now I was with a bruise on my neck, having my air supply completely cut off by someone that was not an enemy. I didn't know him that well, but he was not an enemy. And I didn't understand, how did he get this idea to just grab me to do it? He didn't even grab the one that was closest to him. He had to turn around to face me to grab my neck. I didn't understand what it was at the time. Now I do. He was simply not afraid. He was afraid to do this to the others because of both class and color. They were from the same neighborhood. It was a rough neighborhood. You fought. He knew they knew how to fight. I was from, obviously, a nicer neighborhood in another state. I didn't know how to fight the way they did. I just didn't have to. I didn't really think about it that much. But now I understand how much, and we were between 4th and 5th grade, I understand how much it played a role. I would have never thought to grab the darkest kid and blame them. That thought never crossed my mind. Take out my anger on someone because they're the darkest in the room. It never crossed my mind. It wouldn't cross my mind that I can tell their ability to scrap based on their shade. That didn't cross my mind either. What did cross my mind was, at that time, I'm not from here. I'm just visiting. My dad's from here, but I'm just visiting. That crossed my mind. But everybody else was nicer to me as a guest than this guy was. And so, now that I look back and I know exactly what it is, I'm going to say this. The black community as a whole is lucky that there has not been a backlash against that so-called backlash, because the first backlash against us so-called light brights was exaggerated based on a perception of light-skinned privilege that we would have. And the truth is, in reality, we don't have that much privilege. You can sit up and you can say that there are times when people try to extend it to us, but in reality, we don't have that much. It's been exaggerated. I've lived it. I know. Some of you would say, well, you wouldn't know about the privilege because it's a privilege. Well, I started paying attention to it when I was younger because everybody thought I was going to have things so easily. And I started to realize that, no, I was always being told, you ain't nobody special. I didn't know why they would say it. But after hearing, it's like everybody thought that I was used to being treated specially, but I was actually used to being treated especially more harshly because I was always hearing this. That's what it was like for me. I didn't understand who thought that I was getting the special treatment. My own dad thought that I might be getting special treatment in certain cases. He thought I might be. Turned out, no, actually, I was always being told I wasn't nobody special. I actually considered for a while that it was because they thought my parents had more money than we had. Well, even when that was true, it turns out that was not based on, it wasn't based on anything other than shade. And for that reason, I'm changing my platform today. I'm not going to actually call for a separate community. Assalamu alaikum, Sam. I'm not going to actually call for a separate community within the racial category. I'm not doing that. I'm simply not going to oppose those that do. Now, I'm not for changing the classification itself, filling out the census form differently. I'm not for that. I'm going to call for us to continue to fill out the census form the way we've been doing so. But what I am going to not do anymore is to go against those that call for a separate community within the community. And the reason for that is because when that happens, when it begins to develop, it's not going to be because the ones in that community requested it. It's going to be that because the ones in that community were requested to go over there. That's why. And then when the next generations come about, the next generations are born, they're going to want to keep that separate identity within the identity, that separate sub-identity. And it is not going to be what you may think, because in all honesty, if that was the case, it would have happened with the Creoles. And the Creoles weren't even all light-skinned. They weren't. That's not the case. And the ones that were light-skinned were not necessarily trying to be separate from everybody else. That wasn't the case either. But what I want you to understand is that if it does become the case, it's not going to be because they wanted it that way. So if this does form and my kids go and settle in that new community, or that sub-community, I should say, and then their kids decide that that when the debate comes up about reabsorption, they don't want to completely reabsorb, and this happens, my grandkids are going to be considered conceited by your grandkids, but in reality, it will not have been the fault of me or my kids. It will have been the fault of those, my contemporaries, who said, y'all need to be another category. Okay. Huh. It'll be the fault, especially of those who said, don't come over here, go over there. They're going to be the main ones at fault. And I'm going to sit up and I'm going to write down for history's sake. And I'm going to let my kids know when I see them face to face. I'm going to tell them, have you heard this call? They're probably going to say yes. And when they say yes, the next thing I'm going to tell them is, this did not even come from an African American. I mean, the issue was here among African Americans before, but the specific calls that you're hearing now for you to be reclassified and set aside and that sort of thing within our people, no, that didn't come from us. That came from some people from Lagos, or whose parents came from Lagos. And they caused this problem again. They caused the disunity and the friction between Africans and African Americans during the 70s and 80s when they were studying in large numbers in the United States. They caused that. It wasn't the Ghanaians, it wasn't the Liberians, it wasn't the Sierra Leoneans. It wasn't the Zimbabweans or the Zambians, it wasn't the Congolese that did this. No, it wasn't even the northern Nigerians or the central Nigerians. They weren't coming from Cross River State or Adamawa State or Plateau State. They didn't come from Kano. They didn't come from Bornum. They didn't come from Jos. Hell, they didn't even come from Port Harcourt, for that matter. No, I'm sorry, they may have. No, they didn't. I'm not even sure they came from Benin City. No, they came from Lagos and started this division. And now today, some of their kids or grandkids are over here in the States, no accent, passing themselves off and starting this stuff up again. And it makes me wonder, I want to ask you, how much did they pay you? But understand, Nothing unites like a common enemy. And to me, that common enemy is the one that did the kidnapping and the enslavement and the colonization. To me, that's been the common enemy. But if you want to join them, then don't get it twisted. I've got no problems going and talking to everybody from all parts of the black world, even in their own languages, and telling them the real problem is them Lagos niggas. It ain't even the Northerners. It's them Lagos Igbo niggas. If that's what I gotta do for the betterment of the rest of our people, I'll do it because I don't see another option. But it's up to you. Those of you that I just blame, so to speak, it's up to you. You can choose. And most of you, the average person in Lagos, the average Igbo anywhere in the South, really isn't concerned about this. But now that you know that this is an issue from some of your people doing this, here's your option. You can confront the rest of them that are doing this if you know who they are. If you can do this and shame them and silence them, then the rest of us can start shaking hands, comparing notes, and finding ways to cooperate for our mutual benefit against mutual enemies. I hope that that's the route we take. I'm just not very optimistic. Thank you for listening. I know this took a long time. The blackest of the black, signing blackout. Assalamu alaikum. And this time I'm gonna say it. Black power across the board, just because they don't like it.